Good evening, everyone. How is everybody doing?
Great, Doc. How are you doing?
Great.
Great.
Good.
Good morning, Doc.
Oh, morning is evening. Evening and morning.
You know Japan time is different, sir.
I know, right? I know, Jason. Hopefully everybody had a great week. We are going to start off here shortly. All right, I think we are going to start rolling. So welcome everyone. This is Eretmis Cyber Chat. I appreciate your time. Every Friday we do Cyber Chat 7 p.m. Eastern, and like I always say, you could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here to be with the Eretmis family and to learn to get ahead in cybersecurity. So today's topic, we are looking at PCI, again, still career path, different career paths in PCI, and predominantly we will be looking at certifications within PCI or moving or getting certified by PCI actual for a PCI DSS career. And we are going to look at everything in terms of building yourself up to that level as well, right? So, but before we start, we are still running our Memorial Day special. So that is why we have that on here. So we are going to move ahead. I'm Dr. Emmanuel Edu. I'm going to be your facilitator for tonight. And tonight we are going to try to keep it at an hour because I have another engagement right after this. So we are starting with our 6-figure PCI career path, right? Paths. So we are going to look at the different career paths that we have out there, and predominantly looking at exactly when it comes to PCI. Most people are very familiar with just PCI DSS. There are a lot more other frameworks out there that goes to support PCI. So we are going to look at that also and look at the different aspects of that. And then also in terms of qualifications, how are you going to be able to get there eventually in your PCI career, right? So let's get started. But we are going to start off. Welcome everybody once again to Eretmis Academy. This is brought to you by Eretmis Academy. And I'm Dr. Emmanuel Edu, former United States Army captain. I'm a QSA. I'm the owner of Eretmis Inc., a QSA company, cybersecurity company based in New York, and Eretmis Academy, founder of Eretmis Academy as well. So let's move forward. Now we are going to start off with our cyber news, like we always do every Friday night. So, and then we are going to look at an overview of some of the PCI DSS, the PCI standards, right, which PCI DSS is part, and then we will look at PCI assessors. We will look at PCI certifications, career path, as it pertains to the PCI assessors on those lines. And then we're also going to look at training for or preparing yourself for different career paths within PCI. And then some examples of job listings if we are able to get to that. And then the new PCI training that we have coming up in June, right? So we are starting off with our cyber news. So for this week, TikTok was in the news, and Montana is the first state in the United States to ban TikTok in the US. And they did this because they suspect that China is using TikTok to gather intelligence from users, right? So it's alleged, right? So the states went ahead, they passed a law to ban TikTok within Montana, right? Now we have some TikTok users who are also making, maybe money probably from TikTok, or who are, who stand to benefit more from TikTok. They have also taken this to court. They are trying to block, or they are trying to have this, undone, right? So that is one security news in the news this week. I think this was like yesterday or something of that nature. So yes, we are going to move on again to, there is an app, a school app that is predominantly used, I think, in China. They were also in the news. And what happened was that is a popular university admission platform. It's called Leverage EDU. They leak some of their students or most of their students' information, sensitive information, including passport, copies of their passport, financial documents, certifications, exams results, because of a misconfiguration, right? So the human aspect of security that we always talk about, because of misconfiguration, that is how all this happened. And they didn't have any, so I think as part of the misconfiguration, they didn't have any authentication in place or required. So anybody could have access to students' personal information, which is a really big no-no when it comes to security, right? So these are just the two that we are going to look at for tonight. We are going to move straight into our agenda for tonight, which is PCI DSS career path, right? So we are looking at an intro to PCI SSC real quick, and then we will jump into the career path, right? So PCI SSC, normally called PCI Council, is the organization that comes up with all the frameworks or all the standards within PCI that we are going to be looking at here. They are responsible for training, they are responsible for education, they are responsible for developing these framework, and they are responsible for creating awareness within the globe or all over the globe about PCI and staying in compliance with PCI. Right? This company was formed by the card brands, so traditional card brands, MasterCard, American Express, Visa, Discover, JCB. They are the owners of PCI Council, right? So, but PCI Council is an independent entity that functions as a company on its own, right? So they are able to come up with all these, and they are staff, full-time employees who don't necessarily work for these card brands, but work specifically for PCI Council. And reason why we have to understand PCI Council and where they are coming from is to help us understand, where we also want to get to, right? Or the idea behind all these PCI frameworks that we are going to look at. So one thing that PCI Council doesn't do, or PCI SSC, one thing that is not part of their job is to enforce punishment or to take any punitive action when a company fails to stay in compliance with PCI DSS or with PCI DSS or any of the other frameworks, right? If any company fails to stay in compliance, it is the card brands, Discover, American Express, Master, they are the ones who are going to punish, if you want to put it that way, these entities that fail to stay in compliance. So punishment ranges from the card brands not allowing you to take their cards for payment, and then all the way to fines, right? But there's no prison time or there's no jail time because this is not a law, right? That can put you in jail, but it's a law that set by PCI, by industry players that can probably get kick you out of business, right? Because if you are not allowed to take debit card or the credit cards or any form of card, I don't see how your business is going to survive that way. So we are going to look at, so these are some of the things that PCI SSC does, or the PCI Council. So they come up with the technical security standards. They set security guidance. They also do security training, education, and they do stakeholder engagement. So stakeholder engagements involving training entities that have to stay in compliance, or creating awareness for entities that have to stay in compliance, and then also for entities that have to do assessments on companies that have to stay in compliance. They all go through PCI. Right? They all go through the PCI Council. Now, who has to follow any of these frameworks that we are going to look at? Any entity that directly touches cardholder data, or that directly touches cardholder data. So what I mean by directly touches cardholder data is if your company accepts, and by accepting, if they store, transmit, or process cardholder data, then they have to stay in compliance with PCI. Right? Even if you outsource this to a third-party company, you still have to make sure that third-party company is staying in compliance with PCI, because ultimately you are responsible for the credit card, debit card information you are accepting from your customers. So now we are going to jump into the standards or the PCI frameworks that are out there as of today, right? So the first one we are going to look at is the overall action framework, that is PCI DSS. So PCI DSS was the first framework, or is the main framework from PCI. Out of this framework came a lot of other frameworks to help support PCI DSS. So the overall goal with PCI DSS is to help provide a secured environment for credit card and debit card information that are being given to companies, right, for payments, right? So that is the main goal. Now we have other frameworks that came out of PCI DSS. So that is what is listed on here. So traditionally we had the P2PE, we had PADSS, which was Payment Application Data Security Standard, but that has been retired. So now we have SSF, that is the Software Security Framework. But I'm still going to go down the list. So the frameworks that we have, or standards that we have within PCI, and maybe probably have to go back a little bit for maybe anyone who is not familiar with frameworks and standards within the security industry or within IT in general, right? When we talk about frameworks and standards, specifically information security, we talk about is a list of best practices that organizations have to follow, either by law or by industry requirements like PCI, or just nice to have, right? If you want to, let everybody, your stakeholders know you are following good security practices. So we have some frameworks or standards that are mandated by law. Others are mandated by the industry or some industry players. Others are not mandated by anybody, but they are still good security practices that will help you keep a good security hygiene, right? So PCI falls under the section, PCI DSS falls under the section of industry enforced, but not mandated by law, right? And it's not nice to have, you have to follow it. So now moving into PCI itself, within PCI, they also have other frameworks outside just PCI DSS, right? And that is what we are going to be looking at. And all these frameworks, they kind of stand alone on their own. They have their own individual assessors, right? Or individual auditors who will come and do the audits and, certify you and say you are good or you are not good. So we have PCI 3DS core security standard. That is also another framework aside PCI DSS. We have PCI card production, logical security, and physical security standards. So this pertains to companies that manufacture the cards that you are using, the actual debit card and credit card that you are using. And then we have point-to-point or P2PE standard, encryption standard. So P2PE encryption standard is also one of the traditional or the old standards that go hand in hand with PCI DSS. And we have PCI PIN standard. That is also one of the old ones. And we have software security framework, which is a replacement of the old payment application data security standard, right? PADSS was retired in October last year, and it has been replaced with software security framework. So these are the standards or frameworks that we have within PCI as of today, right? And all of these, they all go to help, or every single one of these standards, the main objective behind it, or behind the creation of it, was to help organizations easily pass their PCI DSS assessment, or to enforce different aspects of PCI DSS by really, blowing it up and making it their own, like a standalone framework, right? That way, they are able to make sure that security, they are looking at security really with a bigger lens, and they are seeing everything that is going on when it comes to payment, when it comes to cardholder data or account data. So simply, All those are fancy words for credit card and debit card information. So now we are going to look at, where I get most questions. PCI DSS certifications. I think we did a chat on PCI DSS certifications previously, but the certifications have been added to. So there have been new certifications that have been added as of the last time that we did talk about PCI DSS certification. So today we are not going to really go deep into each of the individual certifications, but we are just going to, introduce the certifications, and then we will go into the prerequisites for getting these certifications, right? So for all the frameworks that we talked about, these frameworks, they all come with certifications, right? So for the certifications, PCI certifications are mainly for auditors who want to audit that specific aspect of PCI, right? So when we talk about PCI DSS QSAs, they are auditors who are auditing using the PCI DSS standard, right? When we talk about SS, so auditors who are auditing your SSF, they are auditors who are going to focus predominantly on your software security, right? So all these certifications that we see here, they are certifications that are predominantly for companies and then individuals who want to work within the PCI space, either doing audits for the most part, or doing maybe vulnerability scans for like an ASV. But we are going to look at them individually and break them down. All right, so the first one we are going to look at is the 3DS, right? So 3DS assessors, they are assessors who are auditing the 3D, that is the 3 domain security within PCI space. So this is, I wouldn't say new, but it is a solution that is used to enforce another layer of authentication when we are making purchases online, to make sure that our card information is kept safe. Right? So there are assessors who have to do that assessment, and they are the 3DS assessors. Now we have ASVs, approved scanning vendors. They predominantly do vulnerability scans, right? But within PCI, when you are undergoing your PCI DSS assessment, we cannot take any vulnerability scan. It has to be one that is performed by an ASV, right? And all these titles or all these qualifications that we are looking at here, they are not individual qualifications except PCIP, and we are going to get to that. So for you to be an ASV, you have to, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself in the prerequisites, but this has to be an ASV company first, and then individuals within the company can become ASVs. So that is how PCI has set up their certification. Right now, we are going to explain more as we are moving along in terms of career path. So if you want to be an ASV, where do you start? Right? You cannot just jump and become an ASV overnight. But where do you start? How do you build yourself to that point? That is what we are looking at tonight. Okay. So we've talked about ASV. Now we are going to move ahead to card production security assessors. So card production security assessors, they are assessors who will assess how credit card and debit card, the card itself is produced, right? It has to be produced in a secured way. So they are the ones who are going to do that assessment and make sure that it is produced in a secured way. Now we have internal security assessors. They go through the same training, similar training like your QSAs, but they do internal assessment within the organization. Right? Now we have P2PE assessors. They are assessors who are going to assess your P2PE solutions that you have within the organization, right? And every single one of these assessments, they are all included, or you find them during a typical PCI DSS assessment, right? They form smaller parts of PCI DSS assessment, but on their own, they are a full-blown assessment. So this is a way of PCI putting layers upon layers upon layers to make sure that, you know, security is really top-notch when it comes to keeping credit card and debit card information secure. All right, so we are going to look at qualified PIN assessors. So qualified PIN assessors, when you go to your shop, or if you are using any POS system, you know, like where you dip or you swipe your card, when you are typing your PIN, that device also has to be manufactured in a secured way. And who is going to test or who is going to audit these devices and make sure they are manufactured in a secure way? That is your QPA, right? Now we have qualified security assessors. The most common one that almost everybody on here will know, QSAs. I'm a QSA. QSAs, they are the ones who will do the overall assessment that is using PCI DSS framework itself, right? So they do the main assessment, not the main, but they do the PCI DSS assessment, right? Which includes everything that is listed on here. But during the PCI DSS assessment, if your vulnerability scans were done by an approved scanning vendor, it makes my work easier because I'm just going to check off and then fill in the blanks for whoever did the assessment, right? And then move on. Now, if it wasn't done by an ASV, you don't have a vulnerability scan, right? Your internal ones that you are using within your company or that any like security analyst is doing cannot be used to pass your PCI DSS assessment, right? So if you have a P2PE solution assessment done already, when I get to that part of my assessment, I'm just going to, you know, put the details of whoever is qualified to do it, that did it, and then check it off and move on, right? So everything that is being done here goes all the way to help with overall PCI DSS assessment, right? Now we go to the software, the secured software assessor. So secure software assessor, they replaced PAQSA, that is payment application qualified security assessor. So because you don't have payment application framework anymore, it has been replaced by SSF. So SSF and SSF has been broken down into two. We have the secured software side, and then we have the software lifecycle aspect of it as well, right? So we have two assessors who are going to be doing who are going to be working under SSL, which is the framework doing assessment. Now we have PCI forensics investigators. So these are the people who conduct investigations when there is a breach, right? So like the one that we just talked about. So if that breach borders on, if attackers were able to make away with credit card and debit card information, then we have to call in a PCI forensics investigator, right? They are the ones who are going to do the investigation and see where you fell short in terms of PCI DSS, right? Whether you were in total compliance or you were not. Now, there's not been any breach whereby the company that was breached was in total compliance with PCI DSS. There's been none, zero, right? If you're in total compliance, then you wouldn't be breached, right? Or, you know, so far, there's not been any company that was in total compliance, right, when they were breached. Now, also to maybe speak more on that, there's nothing like zero risks, right? So although we are using PCI DSS and other frameworks, there's always going to be some, you know, level of risks. But the goal of PCI DSS and other frameworks is to minimize that risk to a negligible level, right? That is almost impossible for attackers to take advantage of, right? So investigators, PCI forensics investigators, that is what they do. So they are part of the assessors, or they are part of the PCI certifications and qualifications that are out there. Now, the last one that we will look at before we come to PCIP is qualified integrator and reseller. That is your QIR. So these are the individuals who install any payment application or payment software that you have to install on any of your systems, right? Under PCI, you cannot just have anybody install any software, any payment software, or any payment software on any system, unless it is by qualified QIR. So QIR, they are also resellers. So they also sell or they resell software, payment software from different vendors as well. Now we are coming to look at the last certification here, that is PCI Professional. So all these certifications that we talked about from ASV all the way down, all these certifications, they are attached to companies, or they are companies who are these certifications first, and then individuals can be qualified under those companies to work as an ASV or to work as QSA or to work as anything, right? Now, the only certification under PCI that is not attached to any company is PCIP. That is PCI Professional. Now, this is an entry-level PCI certification that PCI is introducing to help people who want to learn about PCI, at least get qualified on this to be able to say that, or show that they have the knowledge and skill to be able to work within the PCI space. So, but you don't necessarily need this to be able to work in PCI. Not really, but if you have it, it's good. It's nice to have, right? So, but this is the only certification. So if you are looking to get any PCI certification now, without working in any of these companies that are certified to do, any of these assessments, you can first target PCIP, right? And after that, build yourself. Now we are going to look at some prerequisites when it comes to getting certified as PCI, anything, ASV, QSA, name it. Now we are going to look at the QSA one. There is a whole list of it when it comes to the prerequisites, but the QSA one kind of covers almost everybody's, right? So we are going to look at this first. Now, for just looking at QSA, but also look at it that it covers all the other ones like ASV, your 3DS, and the rest, right? So for you to be a QSA, the minimum requirement, I'm kind of still getting ahead of myself because what I'm going to say is the last one on the list. You have to be working for a QSA company. For you to be an ASV, you have to be working for an ASV company. Now that is you being an ASV by title, not being an ASV or QSA by knowledge and skill, right? So having the knowledge and skill of a QSA and having the title are two different things. So you can do the work of a QSA, but you can't sign off on it, right? And we are going to explain and break that down. So, but for you to officially be a QSA, you have to be working for a QSA company. And there are other minimum requirements that you have to meet, which we are going to look at, right? For you to be an ASV, for you to be CPSA, for you to be QPA, for you to be any of the list on here with the exception of PCIP, you have to be working for a company that has that certification, right? So that is the first thing for us to get out of the way. Now, once you are working in such company, if you've been working there for a while, or you have the skills and knowledge coming into the company, these are the minimum requirements that you need to be able to pass the certification, that will be given to you by PCI to actually officially become to get that certification, right? So first, you should be able to pass background checks. Now, we are dealing with credit card and debit card information. So obviously, you should be able to, pass background checks. So I think with background checks here, they'll do criminal checks, and I think that is the biggest in the list. So law enforcement checks to make sure that you don't have any prior, even if you have any prior offenses, is based on individual basis and also based on what type of offense that was, right? So obviously, if it is somebody who's been who was got in problem with the law because of a credit card or debit card fraud, obviously you are not going to pass background checks for this, So background checks, you should be able to pass, and you should have sufficient information security knowledge. Keyword here, sufficient information security knowledge, right? And then also experience in conducting complex security assessments, right? So aside you working in a QSA or SSF company, you have to be able to pass your background check. Then you have to possess a sufficient information security knowledge. So sufficient information security knowledge, and then also you should be able to conduct technical complex assessments. So if anybody tells you PCI is easy, I mean, you can just learn it on your own or anywhere, or to be an ASB is easy, you can really, it is not easy, right? Not by any means. And if you are looking, people also get into that space of, I want something that is easy, it's not non-technical. Everything in cybersecurity or in information security is technical, right? Every specific area, you know, that you want to study, not just IT, but if you want to be anything, specialized knowledge in that area is technical knowledge, right? So, but mostly people think technical aspect here in security only refers to the coding part, and you know, so that is not only the technical portion. If you understand what defense in depth is, if you understand what principle of least privilege is, all that is technical knowledge, because you can just ask somebody on the street or ask your cousin who is not into security what is principle of least privilege, they wouldn't know, right? So because of that is technical knowledge, right? And also understanding that and being able to implement that, you need to be able to have that technical know-how. So within PCI, it requires you to have information security knowledge sufficient. So a working knowledge, what I call working knowledge, you should be able to also conduct complex security assessment. And this simply says that you should be able to understand security fundamentals, and you know, you should be able to function within that space. Now, the next prerequisites is that you should possess at least 1 year of experience in each of the following information security disciplines. So application security, you should have at least a year of experience in application security, a year in information system security, in network security. Now, it doesn't have to be a year each. It can be a year, you know, concurrently going side by side, right? So that is one of the minimum requirements. And these minimum requirements, so if, let's say you are working for Eretmis Inc. Wants to take you to PCI to get qualified as a QSA, during the application process, we have to answer questions on these, and then we have to also state your experience working under these disciplines. So all those, we are going to account for what you did within those disciplines. Now, you should also possess 1 year of experience working in an audit/assessment discipline. So for everybody on here, if you've been working in audit assessment discipline, you are bringing in some skills to the, you are bringing in some experience to the table, right? So building yourself gradually to get to the point where you become a fully qualified QSA, ASB, or anything is just a matter of time, right? So we are going to go more deep into that. Now, for the disciplines that they are looking at when it comes to audits, IT security audits, right? And now, if you've done audits anywhere else, accounting, name it, the principles remain the same, right? Just that here is going to be IT security, but principles of auditing, for the most part, they remain the same. Right? Now, information security risk assessment or risk management. So if you are already working in such a space, then you also bring in some level of experience on board. Now, there are also some certification requirements. So certifications to get certifications, right? Kind of pretty cool. So these are the certification, the minimum certification requirements. If you want to be a QSA, if you want to be any of those that we looked at, right? For the most part, I think ASB is also the same. For SSF, it's also the same. But I think for SSF, you have to have pen test, some pen testing background also as well. So like I said, we are not going to look at the individual certifications, but the QSA one covers almost everybody's. So that is why we are looking at the QSA one. So the minimum certifications that you need to, after everything that we looked at, right, you need one information security certification, and this is the list, and you need one IT audit certification, right? So let's look at it. For information security, this is the list that PCI wants you to. One of these is what you need to have to also pre-qualify to, you know, go to the QSA training. So first, you need either CISSP or SIM, not both, either or, right? You need certified ISO 27001, ISMS lead implementer 1 certification, or registered information security specialist certification by METI. So METI. I mean, I'm not really familiar with this organization, frankly. These two, very familiar with, but the one down here, not so familiar with. So not sure if they are called METI or just METI. Right now, that is list A, and we have list B. So list B has to do with audit certifications. So you should have at least one of these certifications and one of these, right? So if you have one here and one there already, you're also, you know, a little bit high on the ladder of getting closer to becoming, you know, certified as a QSA or any of those certifications that we looked at. Right now, for the list B, we have CISA from ISACA. We have System and Network Auditor from GIAC. We have certified 2701 lead audits or lead auditor or internal auditor 1. And then we have, I think for this certification also is, I'm not also very familiar with it, ISMS auditor by IRCA, right? And then also if either you can also have IAA certified certified internal auditor, right? I think this certification is not predominantly only for information security, right? I think it's for other just IT auditing stuff also as well. But the most common ones that are strictly information security is CISA and 2700 lead auditor, and also the GSNA one. So you can have either of these together with either one of these, and you'll be on your happy way eventually of getting to PCI to get certified as any of those certifications that we looked at. Now, in addition to everything that we looked at, you also, they also require you to possess some PCI DSS knowledge. So I'll say a working knowledge of PCI DSS. If you are going for the PCI DSS certification, which is a QSA, you have to have a working knowledge of PCI DSS aside everything that we looked at, right? And then also including all applicable documents that pertains to PCI DSS, which you can get from the PCI SSC website. And then now, once you've qualified, once you've met all those pre-requirements, they are going to take you, or like Eretmis, we will take you to PCI, fill out your application and everything, which will answer everything that we looked at. And then once they approve you, you will go to the training, right? And you go to the training and you have to pass the exam. Once you go to the training, you pass the exam, you become a full-blown QSA. And then every year you have to go back, get recertified. Every year, go back, get recertified for all their certifications, all PCI certifications. That is what you have to do. Now, let's get into so now we've looked at certifications per PCI. Now for career path and for careers, right? Without you working in a QSA company, without you working in an ASB company, without you having any of those, where do you start, right? Where do you start? In terms of certifications, we've seen the types of certifications that you need, right? So these are some of the certifications. So if your long-term goal is to become a QSA, start working on one of these certifications. For the list B and for list A, start working on one of these certifications as well. If you have these already, that is fine. Now, your next step, so the career path that we are talking about here, they don't necessarily have to follow, in order. You can be doing them, side by side. So, but the most important, right, and also to start a career within the PCI space, nobody started off directly becoming a QSA or an ASB, right? So what can you do before then? What you need to do before then is to, if you want to be an ASB, a QSA, name it, you have to first have a good working knowledge of either IT or cybersecurity, right? So a working knowledge first, that is the foundation. Now, two, you have to get into a PCI training, so ASB training, PCI DSS, whatever training, and then also do some studying, right? So some people choose to do self-study. That is fine, but I'll rather, learn from somebody who knows what they are doing than just to try to figure things out all day. So having a good working knowledge in cybersecurity IT is the foundation. Now, the next step is, having a good working knowledge in PCI, whichever field or whichever framework, PCI DSS, ASB, KRR, name it, and being able to land a job within that space, right? So there's a lot of PCI DSS jobs there, a lot of ASB jobs there. There's a lot of them out there, right? So once you get yourself a job working as a PCI, anything, PCI manager, PCI specialist, name it, in any of these companies, now you are on track, right, to eventually become either an ISA, QSA, name it. Now, if you find if your target is to become a QSA, you can choose to work in a company, a merchant or service provider company, helping them to stay in compliance with PCI DSS, or you can choose to work in a QSA company that is actually doing the audits, right? So either or, if you are going on either side, you are still on the right career path to eventually become, what you want to become. But then when you get to a point where you think you have the minimum certifications that we looked at for list A, list B, you've accumulated some knowledge and skill under your belt. Now you have to look for a QSA company. If you want to be a QSA, you have to go work for a QSA company. But you cannot be working in a merchant company. If you are working in a merchant company, the most qualification that you can get or certification you can get under PCI is ISA, right? So your company, any company you are working for can take you to PCI to get certified as an internal security assessor, ISA, right? For you to be a QSA, it has to be a QSA company taking you to PCI to get certified. So if your path is to become a QSA, you can go the route of working for a service provider, working for a merchant, gaining the skills and knowledge, eventually moving on to maybe go work for a QSA company, right? But you can't do any of these if, one, you don't have a working knowledge in IT or cybersecurity, and two, you don't have a good working knowledge, skills and knowledge within PCI. If it is QSA, you want PCI DSS, right? If it is, so for regardless, I think either if you want to be QIR, if you want to be an ASV, if you go through PCI DSS, you wouldn't be wrong, right? Because all those are just branches of PCI DSS anyways. So the path for anybody who wants to, one, aside just gaining the knowledge and skill to be able to work in any setting as a PCI manager, PCI specialist, PCI analyst, name it. If you want the qualification itself, this is the path, right? This is the path that you are going to take. Now, we just looked at the one for PCI DSS QSA. It is almost the same for almost all the ones that we looked at in terms of certifications, right? All the certifications that we looked at, it is almost the same. They all need especially for the ones that are assessors, they all need list A and list B certifications. They need the minimum of a year working in, audits, and then working in information security, right? And then they also need you to have a good working knowledge of PCI, right? But now, with that being said, you don't need to be a QSA, you don't need to be an ASB to work for a merchant company or service provider, or even for a QSA company doing PCI stuff, right? So everything that we are talking about, that path is, something that you are looking at into the future, right? But before you get there, and like I said, nobody starts off being a QSA, nobody starts off being an ASB, nobody starts off being anything. We all start from having the knowledge and skill to be able to work, understand what is going on, and to be able to function effectively, help organizations stay in compliance, help QSA companies or audit firms do their audits, right? So how you'll be able to do that, an example is the Eretmis PCI training that we have, right? If you want to, there are other like trainings for other frameworks within other spaces also out there, but the path is what we just talked about. Right? Now, we were going to jump into PCI and everything that goes with it. We've done that already, right? If you are not very familiar with the ins and outs of PCI DSS and the training, please check out some of our videos on YouTube. I think we've done some on PCI certifications. We went through kind of similar, but we went in depth into them, right? And then we also done some on PCI DSS actual itself, diving deep into it. So those videos are there. You can always revisit those, but we are going to leave it up. I know there are a lot of questions, most especially when it comes to the list A and list B, right? And what is really needed, because I get these questions a lot. About what do I need, in terms of career path, where should I be, what should I be studying, what should I be focusing on? Now, what your focus should be. And if you pick any of the certifications that we talked about, PCI certifications that we talked about, now you know the career path, right? So one, good working knowledge, IT or cybersecurity or information security. And then on top of that, PCI, so I will just go with PCI DSS, comprehensive PCI DSS training that will be able to help you work in anywhere, in any setting, in any PCI job title. And then from there, you are gradually, and if you don't have the list A, list B certifications, you are gradually working towards those, right? And then if you want to be an ISA, so ISA is a bit easier because any merchant that undergoes a PCI DSS assessment, if they've done it for a couple of, for a while, they can take you to PCI and get you certified as an ISA, right? But for a QSA, you have to be working in a QSA company. For ISA, you don't have to be working in, there is no ISA company. Any company can take you to PCI to get certified as an ISA. So that is for ISAs, right? And so, but this is the career path, that a very well-tested career path that will help you get there eventually. So we are not going to go through the PCI part of this. We are just going to leave it on here and then open the forum for questions, and we will address those as we move ahead. So please raise your virtual hand if you have any question. And then also, I think there were some in the chat. We are going to address that, and any other ones that are going to come up. So you can raise your virtual hand if you have any questions. I think there's a long one. No, that was at events. Let me look at the last one. So question, I have SIM certification and I'm scheduled to write CISA on June 1st. Is your PCI DSS training next step to get experience? Yes. So if you have SIM, you have CISA, you are on the career path, right? So the next step is to get a PCI DSS training, and the next step to get a PCI DSS job, and eventually you are getting there. So
thank you, Dr.
Yes, you're welcome. I think there is. Okay, so that wasn't a question. Okay, so when a company employs you as a PCI DSS analyst, are you expected to perform all these other PCI roles and duties? So yes, when you're employed as a PCI DSS manager, analyst, name it, you are ultimately responsible for everything PCI. And it even goes beyond that, right? Aside PCI, you are also a cybersecurity professional or information security professional within the company. So anything that borders on information security, if it is not a big company that has a full-blown information security setup where they have a GRC team under which they have a PCI session, right? If it's just two of you, then you're also going to be, in line to work on other security issues, because all security issues will also fall under PCI regardless, right? So for example, if maybe they need to do policy review, all those policies are still needed for PCI anyways, right? If they need to do RICS, like if they need to do a RICS register, that is also going to fall under PCI anyways, right? So you are not only going to be a PCI, so within the organization as a PCI anything, you are responsible for everything PCI. And then also the job titles, don't get too hung up on job titles. Job titles are job titles. You are still going to be doing PCI stuff. So like I was saying, if you have a bigger organization that has, so let's say like a PCI team, and there is like 4 of you, obviously there is going to be a manager, there is going to be, other. So based on where you are probably going to be doing maybe some managerial leadership, stuff as well. But ultimately, all of you are going to be responsible for everything PCI related. And I think there was, Akin, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, so concerning your training, right, for the so I saw that it's gonna be 4 months and maybe 2 months internship. So my question is will the 2 months internship be on top of the 4 months, and will the internship be actually required, or will that work? Over.
Okay, so yes, it's going to be training, 4 months of training, and then we jump into the internship. And the internship is required.
Okay, and the internship will be actual projects, right? That will be supporting? Okay.
Yes.
That sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I think there are some also. So Joe is asking the key in getting a job is mostly focused on experience. How can one get experience with zero experience? How can one bridge that experience gap? Okay, so Joe, that is why we have the internship, right? And for the internship, the goal is to work on different PCI projects, right? So by the time you are done, you've almost done everything that you are going to do within PCI in terms of all major projects you are going to work on. So that is going to be, you've actually done it. It's not you didn't read, or you were not just told, but it's something that you've actually worked on. Right? So you are going to work on different projects, and for your resume and everything, you are going to put what you've actually done on there, not what you just copied from somewhere. I want my dad to take this course. So that is Abdul. I want my dad to take this course. I'm looking at IT. Sorry, somebody keep that out. I think this will be a good fit. He has no IT background. So if you don't have any IT background, we don't encourage you to just jump straight into PCI. You can jump into our cybersecurity entry-level course. It's going to build you, give you that foundation, and then eventually you can get into PCI, right? With no IT background, we really don't. We highly, discourage you from just jumping into PCI, because PCI is a specialized area in cybersecurity, and with no IT background or cybersecurity background, you need that background first before you jump into PCI, right? And there are some folks on here who are in the PCI class, and maybe they can speak to the cybersecurity and IT side of it. If you have no background coming into it, maybe they can speak to it, because some of them, some it was a little bit of a cultural shock, even for those in IT. Others not so much, but from the experience, if they had no background, I don't think they would have been able to do well, as maybe probably how they are doing now, right? So, and Nesta is asking, is the internship, somebody keep that out too. Is the internship applicable to candidates outside the US? So yes, our internship is done remotely, right? And we work on projects. So wherever you are, you can still be part of it, right? I'm currently an ISA for more than 2 years. That is from Festus. For more than 2 years. What do I need to do to get into PCI? Not ISA, IS, Information Security Audit. Okay. So Festus, what you should do to get into PCI is to get a PCI training, and then eventually get a PCI job. Now you are coming in with a lot of information security background, so which is a big plus. So for you, you are just going to build on your knowledge, but now you are just adding PCI, right? And that is, you are going to be way ahead of the curve. That is what I can say, right? Minimum salaries. So salaries were in the list of what we're going to look at, but then we have that, like we've discussed that previously, so that is why we didn't touch on that. But for minimum salaries for PCI, so an example like Festus, who has some IT background already, or for everybody who have an IT background in this course, but for minimum salary for PCI, I wouldn't take anything. If I'm in IT and I'm starting off in PCI, I wouldn't take anything below 130, 140. So that will be my minimum, right? Moving into it, I wouldn't take anything below. As cybersecurity course and the training and internship, PCI are online. Yes, so all the courses, everything is online. For the PCI, we do live sessions, right? We do live sessions during the week, but then there's also an online version of the course that you can take. So you can go through the online version whilst you are still in the live sessions. We meet twice a week for the online session. And Abdul is asking, how will benefit me? Okay, how will it benefit me if I'm working as a Linux engineer? So as a Linux engineer, unless of course you are looking to switch into cybersecurity and into PCI, right? Either than that, learning PCI to work as a Linux engineer, I don't think is really going to help, frankly. Unless of course you want to switch totally from Linux, then you can maybe look at this side. Either than that, is not. I don't really see any big connection in there that is going to make it very helpful. Yes. Okay. So Amma is asking, when you leave a company that assisted you to become a QSA, are you no more a QSA until another company sponsors you to be? I think you answered the question, Amma. So if Eretmis sponsors you, so for me, if I leave Eretmis, I'm not a QSA anymore until I get another company that will sponsor me to become a QSA. I'm not a QSA, right? So, and also for, I think everybody on here knows where to check or how to verify qualification status when it comes to PCI. You just have to go to the PCI website. You go to PCI professionals, and you just click on. So if Dr. Edu says he's a QSA, just click on the QSA link. It will take you to a page. You type in Dr. Edu's name, and it's going to pop up whether he's a QSA or not. So it's very easy to verify that. Unlike other certifications that the person has to give you their actual certification for you to go to the body that certified them. This is online. You can check everybody's, right? So yes, if you leave the company that sponsored you, you are no more a QSA or ASB or whatever that you were, right? So Chris is asking, so a newbie needs some form of training and experience to take this training, or is required to have both. I took CompTIA Security Plus training, but didn't finish. Right, CompTIA A Plus. Okay, yes. So Chris, like I said, you need a working knowledge in security or in IT to be able to get into this. Now we have, so for Chris, I'll recommend our cybersecurity entry-level course instead of PCI. And once you are done with that, you can get into PCI because you have, and that also comes with another internship. That is not PCI internship, but general cybersecurity internship. So once you've gone through that, yes, you can boldly join the PCI class. Akin is asking, will you train students on how to implement PCI technical controls? The training covers way more than that. Way more than that, right? So it covers way more than just implementing the controls, but the strategy that you are coming into. So what we look at, or the ideology behind what we are doing is, you are a PCI professional on the job. Day one, what are you going to do? Day two, day three, week, month, 6 months, a year. What is your plan going into it? What is your strategy, right? Aside that, like what, milestones you have to cross, or like that you have to meet to be able to help, because it's not just about you, but helping the whole entire organization stay in compliance, right? So aside just implementing your PCI DSS requirements and making sure your organization is able to meet all of it continuously, there also has to be a strategy, right, going into it. And the projects that we work on during the internship will help you to really, have a very, to be very confident about your own knowledge and your skill sets. And two, interviews that you go into, you can really speak to what you've done, right? Amma is asking, will Eretmis Academy hire some of our students as QSAs if needed, if need be? Yes, of course. So when we need new QSAs, obviously we are going to look in-house. So everybody in any of the training, take it seriously and shine, because when we have to pick, right, we are looking for people who really took it serious, that we know can actually do the job, right? But if there was like a huge slot, or you can also, if, let's say we're able to get like a QSA, a PCI contract that is for like 10 years and is maybe probably like $50 million, then we will probably need way more QSA. So we are going to pick almost everybody in the class, right? But until then, we will pick some of the students, but not as many, right? And so you don't necessarily need to be a QSA to be able to work in a company like Eretmis Inc., right? So you can work in a QSA company without being a QSA, and then eventually later they will take you to be a QSA, like actually to the training. So Chris is asking, what was the beginner course for? So I'm not really sure what, Chris, your question was. What was the beginner course for? Newbies again, for PCI training. Oh, okay. So the course, PCI for beginners course, it was meant to be an introductory, to introduce into PCI and to, show you around it in terms of certifications and what PCI really is all about, right? So that is what that is for. So going through that does not qualify you if you don't have any security background or IT background to necessarily go do the main PCI course. So I think maybe that is what you are referring to. then I'll look at the rest of this quickly, and then we will open the floor to how many PCI program, how long is the PCI program, and what is the duration? So the PCI program, we have two different programs. We have the PCI specialist and the PCI expert. The PCI specialist is for 4 months, so 3 months of training, 1 month of internship, and that is for the specialist. The expert is 4 months of training, 2 months of internship. Right? And for both, we have online and live sessions. So the online, everybody who enrolls will have access to the online version of the course, and the live sessions we meet twice a week. But then there is a cohort starting every now and then. There is a new cohort starting in June 20th. But the last cohort started in April, I believe. So almost every month and a half, we start a new cohort, right? But until your cohort starts, you can go through the online version of the course. What job titles can PCI DSS trainees apply after completion? Okay, so I think I have the answer to that here. The job titles, there is a whole list of it, right? It was part of the old discussions that we had, but I think we will be able to. That is a good question. So let's share some of the job titles that we have. So these are not by any means all of it, but some of the job titles, right? So PCI engineer, PCI manager, PCI analyst, PCI cybersecurity analyst, PCI consultant, PCI compliance lead, and another list again here. So a lot of job titles that you can apply for to become a PCI somebody. So hopefully that helps. How many hours? So the classes are mostly the hours. Our target is an hour to 2 hours, sometimes more if needed, right? So that is the duration for the live sessions, right? What is the difference between IT audits and PCI? So Nafi, IT audits. So I'll say all forms of all audits will fall under IT audits. All PCI, all the frameworks, PCI, ISO, HIPAA, FESMA, they all fall under IT audits, right? And under IT audits, we have information security audits. We have cybersecurity audits, which cybersecurity and information security, we kind of, interchange it for each other. But IT audit is a bigger umbrella, and everything else will fall under, every form of audit will fall under IT. How many days in a week do we meet? Twice a week is twice a week. Okay. So I think that should be. I think for that should be all the questions in the chat so far. So if there are any more questions, you can please raise your virtual hand and then we will address that. Okay, so last one, Olu has one here. So I have AWS Solution Architect. And I've done 30 interviews. I haven't been lucky. Can PCI training be of any advantage alongside cloud computing? So Olu, I will first address the AWS architect and the job market issue first before jumping. It's not just a matter of adding to your knowledge base and your skill sets. That is necessarily what is going to get you the job. Clement, please unmute yourself. Mute yourself. I keep muting you and you keep on muting. So if you are finding issues landing a job, I think you probably have to fine-tune what type of jobs you're applying for and how you're applying. for those jobs. And for interviews, you are getting interviews, so that is a plus. You are getting interviews, so that is a plus, right? Now, we just have to fine tune what is happening. Actually, I don't know who is helping you with interviews or how you are going about it. But if you've done 30 interviews, at least one, your resume is able to get you, get your foot into the door. Now you just have to polish up on your interview. So if you are going the route of AWS architect, I wouldn't tell you to just easily abandon that because you've done 30 interviews and you were not successful. Still pursue that, but make sure you are maybe polishing up on your interviewing skills, right? So just keep pushing on that direction. But for 30 interviews, I'm not really sure. Probably we can talk offline. I might be able to give you some pointers, but don't just jump into PCI because you are not successful on this side, right? Just keep pushing. Maybe it's just a minor tweak and you'll be able to land the job in that space. Minimum salary we talked about is the internship. So I think everything else we talked about. I think there was a hand raised. There was a hand raised, Alexander, I think.
Yes, thank you. This is Alex. Just a quick question. Once you go through the PCI DSS training with Eretmis, you at least qualify for some kind of job, I assume, right?
Yeah, so you are qualified for almost all PCI jobs that are out there, right? So the certifications that we talked about, right? The QSA, the ASB, those certifications, you don't need those to work in any certain, you don't need those to work as PCI anything. Where you need those are for companies that are assessors and for companies that are directly qualified under PCI to, let's say, do a PCI DSS audit, right? For those companies, you need to be a QSA if you want to. If you are the one doing the audits or you are the one signing off on the audits, right? But even within the QSA company, you can still work. You can have students from us working in such a company, helping them with audits because they know how to do the audits, but they cannot sign off on it because they don't officially have the QSA title, right? But they can do everything, right? So I think like last time. For one of the classes, there were 2 students who were working in a QSA company. And I was talking about, if you're not a QSA, you cannot, do the ROC. So you cannot, fill out the ROC or you cannot be the one signing off. What I meant was sign off on the ROC. I mean, when I said like you couldn't fill it out, they were like, yeah, but I always fill it. Like, that is not what I mean. I mean, you cannot sign off on it, right? So yes, they do some of the work that the QSA would do, but you can't sign off on it. But aside that, companies like service providers and merchant companies that have to stay in compliance, they can't employ a QSA. You cannot be a QSA and working for a merchant. You have to be working for a QSA company. If you're an ASB, you have to be working for an ASB company. So who will be helping these companies who have to stay in compliance, showing them the way and doing continuous assessment and making sure that everything is in row for them to pass their audits? Is going to be you, right? And so all those jobs are there. Not if you're a QSA, you cannot even go do that job. Unless you're a prior QSA, so you are no more QSA, then obviously you can go, apply for those also as well. But you don't need to be a QSA, ASB, or any of those to apply for, because if you are ASB or QSA or any of that, you have to be working for a QSA, ASB company, right? So everybody else, if you have the knowledge and skill, you can work in any of these companies and help them stay in compliance.
Is that with or without a certification?
So certifications, like I was saying, you don't need. So you don't need to be a QSA, and you cannot be a QSA and work for a merchant company, right? So certifications, the only certification that you will need, or ones that we encourage you, will be any normal security certification. Right, so either you have Security Plus, CISA, SIM, any of those, you are building yourself on that track to eventually maybe get qualified as a QSA or any of those. Right? So you don't need any certification to be able to work in that space. what employers are really looking for is the knowledge and skill.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, everyone. I think there are some more questions in the chat, or that was the last one. So all prices are listed. Okay. I think Mr. Williams answered some of it. All right, everyone. I think we are going to wrap it up a bit early tonight. I appreciate everybody's time. So if you have any questions, our contacts are going to be on the screen. You can contact us and we will talk offline. But for, I don't really remember the name, please forgive me, but for whoever was talking about the AWS and not being able to land a job, you can reach out, please do. Maybe we will give you some pointers and it's going to help, right? Our goal is not just to sell you something. Our goal is to make sure you are successful. So if you're already on that path, keep pushing on that path. It doesn't come easy, but at the end of the day, ultimately it is going to pay off, right? So you can reach out anytime and we will help you out as much as we can. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you very much. It's Friday night. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to be here. Ernesta is asking, so for the prices for our PCI class, for the expert is 7,500, for the specialist is 5,500. And we have installment payment options where you can pay over 8 months, or you can do financing through Meritize and one of our sister companies also as well. So, but everything is on the website, eretmisacademy.com. So if you go there, you'll be able to get all that information. All right, everyone, we're wrapping it up. Have a great weekend. We'll meet again next week, God willing. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, Dr. Du.
Thank